had been a very stimulating and hard-hitting dialogue. Thank you. I want to raise one issue which I think is very eminent and would have very significant implications for state finances.
Are you only talking to your political opponent, or are you talking to all of us?
To all of you.
No, in fact, to the finance ministers. Now, this is about the extra budgetary borrowing of the states for capital expenditure. Now, the demand of the central government is that this be considered part of the fiscal deficit or normal borrowing of the state governments. If they insist on it, I think Telangana, Andhra, Kerala, I don't know about Tamil Nadu, you are going to face disaster. Fiscal space for the coming few years is going to be totally erased. And this is not an issue that can be individually negotiated. It's something that requires collective action, legal and otherwise. Particularly when the central government, they have never complied with 3% fiscal deficit. Average has been 4+. While on the eve of COVID, state government fiscal deficit is only 2.75. So I would like the finance minister to respond whether you will be considering possibility of a collective resistance to this move.
I'm not a finance minister, but I'd like to respond to this.
Sorry, can I just
yes.
make use of my role as moderator and just request one, because there's lots of hands, so can we just take 2 questions at a time? I think the lady there had a question as well, and then you can respond to both.
Sure.
Please.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity. I'm Poonam Kaur, and this is a question for all of you, and asking just as a citizen. For a democracy to survive and thrive, we certainly need a strong opposition. Whereas we see in many states that they're enjoying the monopoly. And in this position, how do we really say that the center is unfair or the state is unfair? Nobody is really looking at democracy on the whole. Nobody is really looking at democracy on the whole. Secondly, and this question was specially for you, Buggana sir, for you. We have heard a lot of arguments about the center being unfair to South, and there have been arguments where, there's a lot of difference the way they behave. And having the strength that you have, would you, looking at the situation in Andhra Pradesh, not really ask for special category status? Are we losing it out because of our political selfishness? KTR sir, first I would like to thank you, because on the 75 years of independence, when I went to Pochampally and I tweeted, you've actually released the pension for the weavers, and I really want to thank you for that. And I want to ask you, because you've been tweeting a lot about taxes, is it more true that state is also enjoying the taxes at the same time has the opportunity to abuse the center? Isn't it hypocrite? To you, sir, Dr. Tharoor. Sorry, last one. Dr. Tharoor, would you take the opportunity for a South Jodo Yatra so that the democracy survives? Thank you.
So we'll start with you and ask all of you to give a
Well, I'll take Mr. Isaac's question first. The Fiscal Responsibility Budgetary Management Act that was enacted in 2003 has clearly, outlasted its, intent, is what I would like to believe. Because for a growing economy, which is growing at 7, 8, 9%, and for a state like Telangana, which has grown at a CAGR of 15% over the last 8 years, you cannot look at debt as a burden. In fact, if you ask me, for a growing state, debt is a future investment if you're investing in capital expenditure. If you're investing in productive sector, if you're investing in a sector which is going to actually pay you back, then it's actually an investment, it's actually not a debt, first thing. The second thing is, in fact, Mr. Isaac would agree, when in 2003 the act was enacted by the UPA, it was envisioned that even the center would actually comply. But in the last 18 years, they've flouted it, they've amended it at least 18 times. Now, you can't have two set of rules, for both governments. The central government, while it talks about, debt GDP, debt GSDP, they keep pointing to us that, you're overshooting. There it's 60%. A state like Telangana is at 25%, but we still get told that, you're not behaving. And the last thing I'll tell you, to penalize us, to choke us, to strangulate us, and to tell us that, listen, you're not in compliance, the SPVs that have been borrowing, the corporations that have been borrowing, to look at their debt burden and to actually put it on us, on the state, as, covered under our FRBM, and to put it retrospectively, is something that I will certainly challenge. I will definitely, work with Mr. Isaac. I would definitely go to the highest court in the country, because it affects my state, it chokes my state, it chokes a growing state, and it's a travesty. So that's to Mr. Isaac's point. Now, Poonam, I thank you for supporting handlooms. You said we are hypocritical. I don't think we are at all, because, we are a proud contributor to this nation. I'm proud that Telangana is a contributor. We are only 2.5% of India in terms of population, but we contribute to 5% of GDP. So अगर आज कोई bridge बन रहा है गुजरात में, महाराष्ट्र में, तमिलनाडु में या कहीं और, मुझे कोई उससे दिक्कत नहीं है, but मुझे इसी बात से फर्क पड़ता है, this cultural political hegemony कि हम देने वाले हैं, आप लेने वाले हैं, उस बात से मुझे फर्क पड़ता है, क्योंकि हम contribute कर रहे हैं, हम किसी के subservient नहीं है, किसी के subordinate नहीं है, तो इसीलिए मैं इतना ही कहता हूँ, अगर आप तेलंगाना आते हो दिल्ली से, आके thanks बोल के जाओ, आके यहाँ बिरयानी खाओ, ईरानी चाय पियो, बहुत अच्छी चाय है हमारी, तो बस you please behave in a respectable fashion. You cannot come here and tell us and dictate terms to us and basically tell us that we are not performing when we actually have done rather well. We have the largest per capita income in the country. When 2014 it was 1,24,000 rupees. Today it's 2,78,000 rupees. Our GSDP has risen by 130%. We have outperformed the union government on all benchmarks. So we have a right to decide our own priorities. In fact, I heard Thiagarajan speak in a TV where he has said, famously asked in fact, he said, are you doing better than us that you actually dictate terms to us? So the point is, we are not being hypocritical. All we are saying is we are happy to contribute to the nation. We are more patriotic than you, but at the same time, do not, kind of impose, do not kind of, try and come here and tell us what to do and what not to do. Let us decide our priorities. Let us chart our own course. That's all I'm saying.
Can I just add one point? Do you think a fiscal council where fiscal rules are determined in collaboration with the center and state can help resolve this challenge?
Maybe, but I just want to make a point here about this FRBM Act, right? So, we have our own FRBM Act equivalents and we can amend them also. But the difference between us and the union government, once the union government amends its act, and it has done, as KTR said, 18 times and violated, that's the end of the story. For us, after we amend our act, we'll get these letters. All of us have got one of these letters. Then we get a second letter that says, you shall not borrow more than X rupees. You shall not borrow so much of it, more than so much of it in the market, etc., etc. So this hypocrisy of a double standard where you can do whatever you want, then you tell us that we can't do what the Constitution allows us to do, our Act allows us to do, you use this 293(3) backdoor clause and all that. So let me just put all of it together and say, we don't begrudge sending net donor money or being net not recipients. We don't have any lower concern for the average Indian citizen than anybody else. What we don't like, expanding on what KTR said, don't come and tell us as if you brought this money from your house and gave it to us. It's our money, you're giving it back to us. Some of it you're giving back to us, number one. Number two, either you perform better than us and then tell us how we should act, or you learn from us, or at least leave us alone to perform better than you rather than try to subvert our performance. Number three, if you want to take national policy and actually create things in areas where it's not your domain, right? Education was moved from the state list to the concurrent list. It did become union list. Agriculture is in the state list. Minor dams and ports are in the state list. Why are they legislating over there and how have they involved any of us in it? See, it's one thing if you call all of us collectively and you say this is not working well, let's do it better. We're likely to get some progress, or at least we can agree to disagree and walk away. You enforce by diktat with no track record of performance and say, because I say so, you shall do so. So our friction is not about being donors, our friction is not about being less than caring citizens. Our friction is that we don't get treated as equal partners. That's what the Constitution says. It doesn't say there are two levels of government. It says there are two parallel, equal governments. And we get no acknowledgement for the good things we do, and in fact, we get told how to do it. Let me just take NEET as an example. What is our objection with NEET? Health is a subject where it's very hard to separate education from public health delivery because you can't teach medicine without a hospital. And the government of Tamil Nadu, I would say better than most states, at least in ratio of doctors to patients and other health measures, has done better than almost any state in India. We have an integrated policy that goes all the way from medical colleges to government hospitals to rural health centers to primary health centers, where we incentivize doctors to go and work there so that they can get priority in education, etc. A test like NEET disrupts all of these designs. It's not just about the entrance, it's about the entire health delivery system. And then I ask the question, on what basis do you tell me that I should change my model when my model has produced far superior results than you and is 100% funded by my state budget? It's not your money. You haven't done better than us. Why should you tell us how we should run an admission test? We will give priority to SC and Dalits. We will give priority to rural students. We will give priority to state schools. That is our health system. It has produced phenomenal results and brilliant doctors all over the world. On what basis do you believe you know better than us? Why should we listen? It's not even your money, it's our money. It's not even a central grant. It's the state of Tamil Nadu allocated 20,000 crores in the budget to run the health system. So this is the attitude that we don't like. Otherwise, we're willing to play with anybody on anything. We're willing to participate, to discuss, to come out with better outcomes, right? Is this big brother or big daddy or, messiah complex that we have a problem with?
So the first question being Dr. Isaac's question, the fiscal issues. In fact, I completely agree with the rest on this. The reason being 60% of the expenditure normally is borne by the states, whereas 60% of the revenue goes to the center. So there's a whole lot of difference, and the responsibilities and the duties of the states are far more citizen oriented than the union. Union has certain responsibilities in the form of defense, certain infra that is common to all the states and to the country, etc. But something that is closer to the citizen is primarily the state's responsibility. Therefore, we cannot have two sets of rules. One borrowing rules for the states and one borrowing rules for the center. Whatever is there has to be common. The same FRBM rules applicable to both. The same conditions applicable to both. Because ultimately, if all the states contribute to a nation, all the citizens are Indians, then the debt of the country becomes the debt of the country, citizen. If the debt of a state is equally distributed to the citizens of the state, the debt of the country also becomes equally distributable to the citizens of the country. Therefore, here we have to be on common ground, them and us. And coming to Poonam's question about special category, it is actually a very solemn assurance and promise given to the state of Andhra Pradesh during the reorganization of the state. During the reorganization of the state, it is like almost after a long time, you send your manager away without even telling them why you are sending him away. And while sending him away, you tell him that, okay boss, I'm going to give you an apartment, and you don't give even that. This is what has happened. And at that point of time, the special category, whatever assurance was given, should have been implemented immediately. Normally what happens, Poonam, I don't know if you have travelled by train ever to Mumbai. You have? Okay, then, in case you travel by train, if you are on time, you reach Bombay Central on time. By any chance, if you are delayed in Kalyan, you wait till afternoon. You can never get there. So this is the same case. You should have got it in 2014. The then government should have fought and got it. Now it is like continuously fighting. Thank you.
South Jodo.
South Jodo Yatra. Look, I'm a supporter of the Bharat Jodo Yatra. But
You are?
I am. But having said that, the South is also a place of diversities. I mean, the fact is that there are different experiences, different cultures, different languages, different needs and different experiences amongst the various southern states. But what we have in common is worth concerting about, because there are some elements that in the national project, I believe the South can usefully concert their views on. And if you were to look at, for example, KTR suggested maybe the Southern Zonal Council or something could be a forum, or maybe a separate fit-for-purpose forum could be created just to discuss these issues. I think we will find that the southern states have a lot of common interests, even one of which happens to be ruled by the BJP, the Karnataka experience is not very different from what Andhra and Telangana and Kerala and Tamil Nadu are experiencing in terms of the distribution of resources, in terms of other considerations. And therefore, it seems to me, yes, that the South can get their act together, talk to each other constructively, but at the same time preserving the very diversity within the South that we want to preserve within India as a whole.
Southern diversity, I'm a half Tamil married to a Malayali. There's a lot of diversity, I can tell you. There's a question there.
Yes.
We'll take two questions. So from you here. I'll have to give privilege to this side now. So.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. KTR साहब से मेरा सवाल है. पहले तो मैं आपको थैंक्स करना चाहती हूँ. आप मेरे ट्विटर के कई ट्वीट्स पे आपने रिस्पॉन्ड किया. जो स्टेट इशू पे मैं बात करती हूँ, तो आपने रिस्पॉन्ड किया, बहुत अच्छा लगा. थैंक यू वेरी मच. मैं आपसे सवाल करना चाहती हूँ. आज ये बैठ के हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. अगर मन की बात जब आई थी, उस वक्त ही उसको हम रिएक्ट करते. मन की बात सारे स्कूल के बच्चों को मन की बात बिठा, सारे स्टेट में बिठा दिए थे. अगर उस वक्त अगर रिस्पॉन्ड करते, उस वक्त तो कुछ सोचते, तो आज इस तरह की बातें करने की ज़रूरत नहीं पड़ती. क्योंकि मैं ये देख रही हूँ, भाग्यनगर बना दिया जाएगा, ये भी स्लोगन चल रहा है. और हम कहते हैं ये नहीं होगा, क्योंकि तेलंगाना गवर्नमेंट, TRS गवर्नमेंट ने इसको वो तरीके से अपोज किया, और मुझे यकीन है कि ऐसा नहीं होगा. लेकिन पेट्रोल पंप के पास देख रही हूँ बड़े पोस्टर लगते हैं हमारे प्रधानमंत्री जी के. और जब आज जब आ रही थी, रूलिंग गवर्नमेंट के बड़े पोस्टर्स थे, तो उसके अपोजिट साइड में उनके भी बड़े पोस्टर्स उतने साइज में पड़े. तो मुझे डर लग रहा कि जैसा कि वैक्सीनेशन सर्टिफिकेट में मोदी जी के फोटो आ गई थी, कहीं बर्तन सर्टिफिकेट में आ जाएंगे क्या? ऐसा कुछ मसला तो नहीं होगा क्या? मेरा ये कंसर्न है. थैंक यू.
Thank you.
We are transgender persons, and the question is primarily to KTR sir as well as to the Minister sir from Andhra Pradesh. There are quite a few migrant transgender persons who have domicile now in Telangana, who have roots in Andhra Pradesh. I have two questions. One is that while their natal families are claiming their rations in Andhra Pradesh, they get no ration in Telangana. It's a process. I must also thank you, KTR Garu, for the Transgender Welfare Board. Some of us are there now. From the time I asked you the question 4 years ago at Bharat Anenenu, we've come some distance. Thank you for that. The second question is, again, this is a South issue. The state of Karnataka has thankfully given 1% reservation. I would exhort you all to give a little more than that if possible. Thank you.
Okay. In order to accommodate both questions, can you just keep them short? I know you've been waiting, sir.
My name is Bhaskar Pinna from USA. Just I want to give one question to you. So the discrimination among the states, right? How can we overcome that? So one nation, one India. So the humanity is a religion. Then how can we take over to the India, like instead of this religion and religion politics? So humanity is a religion, right? So one India, one nation, one vote, then one humanity. How can we take over to the citizen of India instead of the religion politics day by day?
Thank you. Thank you. Your question.
Yeah. At the outset, I would like to compliment all the panelists for the quality of their discussions and the depth of their observations. I think it's very well rounded and very well put. Now, we're all Indians at heart. We want the country to do well. And unless we grow as an economy, there is no scope for us to deal with our internal challenges nor our external threats. So the focus has to be on economy, like all of you have rightly pointed out. Now, again, we are a young nation, young demography. I think at a certain level, there's a lot of pessimism creeping in because of the way things are going. The focus has to be brought back to the economy rather than ideologies and things like that. My question is, will you all, I mean, I see this great quality of leadership here, and I see this as the future of the states. And will you all collectively work for bringing the focus back onto the growth of the economy rather than things that are inconsequential right now.
Thank you. We've usually started the answers this way, so maybe we can start this way. And I think we're getting to the end of the session. So any last remarks you'd like to add to in response, please?
I'll start with Sri Pallamraju Gari question. Definitely. I think we're all mostly regional parties, states that were made on linguistic lines. And the people of our respective states have put utmost confidence and trust on us and elected our governments and our chief ministers. So definitely, I think we'll rise to the occasion.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, results matter. Our job as public servants is to improve people's lives. Some of that we can do directly through schemes or subsidies or programs. Some of that we can foster an environment where the economy grows and more opportunities are created. But we must all hold ourselves accountable to some concrete outcomes, and if we feel we're making progress, then that validates everything. You know, we all come with different philosophies into public life. What philosophy you come with is only relevant if at the end of the day you deliver an outcome. Then you say, I was able to deliver this outcome because I came with social justice or inclusion or, participation or whatever it is. What worries me about the country, if I look at the last 8 years, the agglomeration of power in one or two sets of hands has kept on accelerating. And the outcomes, either in absolute numbers or in relative numbers to where we should have been had we been on a growth trajectory, have kept on going the wrong way. This is a dangerous, scenario anywhere. If you find that greater and greater political strength and institutional dominance and worse economic outcomes and lack of jobs and so forth. So I think what distinguishes us at this point today in the South is that we are bucking that trend. Our governments are delivering and we are improving people's lives, and therefore people, elect us or re-elect us and give faith. This is the only sustainable model. If you cannot deliver results, sooner or later you're going to have to be held to account. It may take a long time. Large systems between cause and effect is a big gap, and it's hard to attribute which effect to which cause and all that. But at a macro level, there has not been any other sustained example in the world where things have kept on getting worse without some kind of correction. That's true in the markets, that's true in society, that's true in politics. So I couldn't agree with you more. I think really we should mark ourselves to market. What have we achieved? How many people's lives have gotten better? Is there a faster trajectory? Is there a better path? Those are the things we really should be bringing to the debate. And for the most part, I would say, at least in much of the South, until recently in Karnataka, those used to be the issues. Unfortunately, we are seeing now Karnataka slip a bit into all kinds of, other issues, which is not good for the people. And already we can see the economic kind of consequences, right? I'm sure that in Telangana, in Andhra, certainly in Tamil Nadu, we're seeing lots and lots of big companies start to say, should we keep all our eggs in one basket? Should we really be Karnataka or Bangalore-centric? Should we start trying to diversify out? It's not yet become a, exit, but it's certainly becoming a, should I invest any more in this society where things are not stable? So that's the future of any society, right? Is people's lives getting better. That's what we're all here for. And certainly I think we focus on that every day, and we'll continue to focus on that every day. It's ironic that when you had coalition governments and people who were considered weak, you actually saw huge progress in the country. And now you have this single-party government and people who are considered, or individuals are considered, strong men, and outcomes are getting worse and worse. It tells you something about why democracy with a lot of debate and a lot of participation and a lot of voices and a lot of, dissent is actually a good thing. It yields better outcomes than the perception of, some, superhuman force, shall I say.
Well, I think at the beginning of our conversation, the fear was expressed that some of the sentiments we're going to discuss might be seen as anti-national. I think it's worth stressing that I think everybody here in this panel is a nationalist. We are interested in seeing India prosper and thrive, but India is made up of all of us, is made up of all the states, is made up of all the people of this country. And clearly, when I talk about reimagining federalism, it's about achieving a more constructive balance between centre, states, and indeed panchayats, so that we could actually have a win-win proposition for all. The idea should be, and should clearly be, that we want India to thrive. That means that everybody must feel they have a common stake in outcomes, and that those outcomes are sometimes better delivered at the lowest possible level, and in some cases can only be delivered at the national level. And I think until that's clearly understood, we're going to have the kinds of problems that particularly the three state ministers have so clearly identified in their comments today. And I would simply urge all of us to understand that being proud of our nation requires us to have the imagination also to see the challenges being faced in the way in which the nation is being run. That's really all I want to say. I think I really do want to renew my congratulations to the organizers for having got these voices and minds together today, because I do believe that it's time the southern states and southern intellectuals, thinkers, writers started talking much more to each other about how we can imagine our place in an India which is changing in quite dramatic ways in the last few years, changing towards a conception of India that perhaps we don't share in quite the same way in these southern states. And we need to think about how we fit in and how they should fit in with us in order to make the collective India work that much better.
Thank you. KTR?
Thank you. A lot of times when I criticize the union government, when I criticize the Honorable Prime Minister, let me put it on record and let me say this. Every patriot in any country, would love his country all the time, would support his country and stand by it all the time. But I would only support my government when it actually deserves it. I would support the country 365 days, 24/7. But I would only support the government when it actually deserves it on issues. Otherwise, we don't. That's exactly the mantra we've followed over the last 8 years. We have supported this government in on GST. We have supported them on numerous bills. It's not like, we oppose everything for the sake of opposing. But the fact is, in the world's largest democracy, if you do not open up and talk about real issues, Pallam Raju Garu spoke about economy. I think that's paramount. For a growing country with large population, 140 crore people, unless we get our economics right, unless we ensure that the economy is on track and it is not derailed because of our myopic policies, we are going to hurt the long-term interest of this nation. So it is our bounden responsibility in a vibrant democracy, going back to Madam's question as well, कि हमें डर लगता है कि ये होगा, वो होगा, society में anarchy आ जाएगी. I'll only tell you one thing. I think a vibrant democracy needs a vibrant opposition. A vibrant democracy needs a vibrant opposition. So unless we question, unless we ask, unless we point out to the flaws, unless I tell you that in 8 years, what have we seen, from the strongmen who have been running this country? Highest inflation in 45 years, highest unemployment in 30 years, highest value, devalued rupee, 80 rupees, There were lots of murmurs around 60 when it was 60 in Dr. Manmohan Singh's time. Now today it is at 80. We have the highest number of poor people in the world after COVID. We have just recently surpassed Nigeria. And unless we talk about it, unless we debate these issues, attention would be constantly diverted to nonsensical issues. And those nonsensical issues are about, getting the attention on halals, hijabs, and all other things which are actually redundant and nonsensical in the context of our larger country, larger interests of this country. So I absolutely agree, sir. Our single-minded focus over the last 8 years in the state of Telangana has been to improve our economy. Our economic fundamentals are strong. We've focused on basics. Therefore, today our GSDP, like I was pointing out, has risen from 5,06,000 crores to 11.55 lakh crores. Our per capita has risen from 1,24,000 rupees to 2,78,000 rupees, which is one of the highest in the country for a large state. Our contribution to GDP has risen significantly over the last 8 years. We are a performing state. We want to be a part of the nation building exercise, but at the same time, while we focus on economics, we will not tolerate discrimination. When we went to Government of India, and when we told them, 5-6 decades ago in Hyderabad, defense PSUs were set up because of strategic reasons, because of geographical reasons, our distance from our hostile neighbors. And when we requested the minister and the union government to actually create a defense industrial production corridor here, the answer was absolutely amusing. She had said, the decision is made, it will be in Bundelkhand. I said, why? Is it because Bundelkhand and Uttar Pradesh have 80 Lok Sabha seats and I only have 17? So these political considerations and this parochialism that is at play needs to be debated, needs to be talked about, needs to be spelled out. People might not like it, when you keep pointing out to flaws or pointing out to certain things. But the fact is, unless a vibrant opposition, and since Shashi's party is not doing much, it is upon us, to
Object strongly to that, come on.
So, no, you're trying to do a Jodo Yatra, but
I've just been marching in that.
अरे नहीं यार, मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि आप लोग यहाँ जोड़ रहे हो, वहाँ पे लोग छोड़ रहे हैं, वो भी देख लो. मैं क्या कह रहा हूँ? Unless each of us steps up, unless each of us starts talking, unless each of us actually, take this seriously. Like Sunita was saying, are we romanticizing the notion of India? I think with all of our differences, with all of our, this heterogeneous country being together for 75 years in itself is an achievement. But what about the next 25? What about the next 75? I think that therein lies the challenge. And unless we focus on economics, unless we ensure, and this is the really last point I would like to make. Prime Minister keeps talking about freebie culture. Let me point out, the privileged in this room, the upper middle class in this country, the middle class in this country, the fact that you guys are resting in peace, in the comfort of your home, is because the governments are actually taking care of the restlessness in the poor and the vulnerable by way of the welfare schemes. It is the bounden responsibility in a third world country like India of the government to take care of its vulnerable. To call it a freebie is actually again a shocker coming from Prime Minister. So my humble appeal to all of you, please support vibrant voices in opposition. Please support vibrant democracy, and that's the only way India is going to forge ahead.
Dr. Tharoor, thanks for the encouraging words. And this question is on behalf of the audience. As representative of the South, most people would like to know when you are filing your nomination for the Congress presidency.
Well, the notification is only coming out on the 22nd, so at least
I know you are a diplomat. You can skirt the most difficult questions, but still.
Being a politician, I may not be able to spell it out. I may not be able to canvas for it. But is it not the time for us to unitedly work for a production-oriented subsidies? And whatever, I was the person who piloted the free electricity bill or act in the country. But don't we think that it is the time now for us all, let us support all have-nots, let us support all people who deserve every way of support in education, in health, in everything else. But is it not time for us to link it with the subsidies or the so-called freebies with the production?
Thanks.
And take the nation forward?
Thanks. I think, does anyone want to give a quick answer? I don't think we can, unfortunately, because we really are out of time. But I'm sure that they can take your question outside of this. I think that it's often said that the future of India rests with the states of India. I think if there was ever an illustration of why federalism matters, it matters because the voices and views of states collectively come together to make the nation. It matters because argument, debate, and deliberation make the nation, and federalism is the means by which these principles come together. I think this panel has been such an important illustration of just this. It's a spirit that we're losing, but I think quite clearly it's certainly not lost. It's being fought for very hard, and it will be back in all its robustness, because that's the future on which India will grow. Thank you.